Welcome to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show.
Hello and welcome back to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show with Olivia Vizachero. Olivia is a former attorney turned life and business coach for lawyers. She helps ambitious attorneys stop overthinking, set those boundaries, and take bold action so they can build a practice and a life they actually love. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about how lawyers can stop overthinking everything. Miss Olivia, my dear, welcome back.
So good to see you, Evan. Thank you.
Good to see you too, Olivia. Where do you most often see overthinking show up for lawyers during that typical workday?
Ooh, honestly, in everything they do. And I know that's a pretty broad answer, but it comes in the big things and the little things. So people will overthink what to write in an email. People will overthink whether they should bill for something or not. People will overthink the type of legal argument to make. They will overthink whether they've done enough legal research. They will overthink what issues to concede on and what issues to push back on as far as negotiating goes. They will overthink everything as it relates to business development, what they should do, what they should say. Should they market online? Should they go to more networking events? They will overthink all of the things. What should they work on right now? What should they do later? Should they drop what they're in the middle of to triage an emergency? It shows up in so many different ways.
Mm. Why do lawyers tend to overthink decisions even when they've already had enough information to move forward?
That's one of the biggest issues that I really want people who consider themselves overthinkers to focus on is, do you need more information? And the answer is normally no, you don't. So what leads to that? Normally there's sense of perfectionism, and that manifests in a couple different ways. Sometimes it's the belief that there's one right way to do something, or there's a right answer, where oftentimes that is not the case. There's very rarely a right answer. There are a lot of different answers. Some of them will lead you to the same result. Some of them might lead you to a different result, but people get really hyper focused on quote unquote getting it right. And their fear is what causes them to overthink. They're also craving certainty. So they might make a decision and they want to know ahead of time how it's going to unfold. And they want to make sure that it doesn't unfold in the way that they don't want it to unfold. So they'll obsessively think about it because they're craving that, again, sense of certainty. And they think, if I think about this enough, I'll feel better. I'll feel more certain. What they really need to do is, instead of overthinking it right now, they need to trust themselves to figure it out later, no matter what happens. That's how we create our own certainty without needing to control things that are outside of our control. So, one is thinking there's a right answer. The second part is the perfectionism that manifests when we're constantly striving for the best. And best will be very ambiguous and vague. We won't really understand what the best looks like, what the best legal argument looks like, what the best job on something looks like, but we'll keep striving for it and it's always out of reach. So we'll keep investing more and more time and mental energy trying to reach a standard that we're really unclear on where the bar is for that.
Mm. So, what's happening in the moment when someone feels stuck between options and keeps going back and forth instead of moving forward?
So, one is that they're thinking that time is going to help them feel more certain, and time does not create more certainty. People also have a self-concept where they tell themselves, this is just the way that I make decisions. This is just who I am. I'm someone who needs to think about it. I have to let it marinate for a while before I'm able to move forward. And that's a misconception about how decisions are made. So decisions actually happen in an instant. They're like lightning, is how I like to think of them. There's all the time that you spend thinking about the decision, but that's not you making it. Making it happens in 2 seconds. So knowing the difference between the two, thinking about it and actually making it, and then recognizing if you're spending a prolonged period of time thinking about it, you're craving a certain emotion that you're not currently experiencing. So you want to feel certain instead of worried. You want to feel certain instead of anxious. You want to feel, calm and prepared instead of maybe a little unsure of yourself. So we'll keep vacillating over something because we think the more we think about it, we're going to feel better. But the only thing that's going to help us feel better is our thinking. So you have to change the way that you're thinking about the decision in order to feel more certain. And again, trusting yourself to handle whatever unfolds is one really important way to do that.
Okay, so Miss Olivia, how does overthinking start to show up in a lawyer's work, especially when it comes to decisions, those deadlines, or maybe that client communication?
So it shows up in little ways and in big ones. It will show up in them taking a lot longer to do things. They'll also put stuff off. So if you're a procrastinator, check in and see if there's a relationship between your overthinking and your procrastination. If you're unsure of the best way to move forward, you'll put off getting back to a client because you won't want to make that decision. You're really afraid of getting it wrong. So then you keep putting it off. And again, we want to look at, is there more information that we're waiting on? Typically, the answer is no. If there is more information that you actually need, either go get it or recognize that it's not ripe yet. You're waiting for information that isn't yet available to you and it will become available to you at a later date and time. Amazing. Then postpone thinking about it until you get that more information and then you can make a decision then. But if there's no new information that you can go get or that's going to be made available to you, recognize that there's nothing else that you need to do. But most people are confused and they think that thinking about it is really productive. They think it's going to lead them to a better result. And again, if there's additional information that's going to be made available to you, then that might be the case. But if the answer is no, then you're not going to make a better decision a day from now or 2 days from now. You can make it right now, and you just have to gag and go through that discomfort of feeling a little nervous, a little unsure, a little not confident about the path that you're choosing. But if you normalize that and you stop expecting yourself to feel better as you're making these decisions where there isn't a clear answer as far as strategy goes, then you're able to serve your clients a lot better. You're able to be more responsive. You're able to identify the options and suggest the one that you think is most aligned with the result the client wants. But if you keep thinking that it's supposed to feel differently than it does, you're going to keep putting stuff off, waiting to feel better, but better is not going to come.
Mm. What are some common situations where lawyers tell themselves they need more time or more information, but they're just, stuck overthinking?
With legal research and writing, that's a big one. People will think that they need to do more research before they can start writing a brief. And this kind of ties back in with the deadline thing that you mentioned earlier, is they won't budget their time accordingly or in a way that really sets them up for success. So they'll think, I just need to keep thinking about the argument that I'm going to make. I just need to do a little bit more research, and they won't start writing and they'll leave the writing for the very last minute. And what this ends up doing, number one, they have to scramble, but it creates a situation where pressure comes in and actually gets them out of their overthinking because now the discomfort of making a decision is much less than the discomfort of missing the deadline. So they're actually able to move forward. And it reinforces this idea that that's how they work best. I work better under pressure. But you don't have to work that way if you understand what's driving you to work that way to begin with. If you just normalize, yeah, I'm going to feel a little unsure, but that doesn't mean that I need to put stuff off in order to spend more time thinking about it and then doing it at the last minute. Same thing with, hiring and firing decisions, whether to, bring someone onto your team. I watch people overthink about so many different things. I work with several attorneys who are in a unique pinch point where they want to grow, but they're not certain that they want to bring on the overhead. And as I mentioned this, I think this is a really important point. Another reason overthinking normally comes up and people just keep vacillating between the same options is that they don't like what their options are. So I call this, you're desiring a false third option. Maybe you want two different things, like a combination, having your cake and eating it too. Two things that are very incongruent and you want them both and you don't want to have to pick one or the other. or you just want a different option that's completely unavailable to you and not on the table at all. But if you see yourself just looping or spinning and not moving forward, a lot of times it will be that you're desiring an option that you don't currently have. So if you can identify that, that can help you move forward a lot faster. And again, that will be uncomfortable for you to move forward with an option that you don't absolutely love. But if you can normalize that it's okay that it doesn't feel good, you can really get unstuck a lot faster.
Mm. What's the difference between, being thorough and being stuck in overanalysis?
So part of this is you have to know yourself, but you really want to get in. I talk about this all the time, but you want to get in the habit of defining enough. And here that might look like,
Mhm.
what's a good enough email? You can spend an hour thinking about what to say in an email. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a better email. It might be just as good as the one you would have sent if you spent 5 minutes on the email. But if you define what's a good enough email, okay, it needs to do these three things. I need to tell the client what happened at this hearing. I need to ask them a question because I need some information from them. And then I need to tell them what the next steps are. Okay, if that's a good enough email, that might be 4 sentences. Hey, this just happened. Here's what I need from you. Here are the next steps. And you check those 3 boxes and then sign your name at the bottom and you can move forward. When we're using that ambiguous standard of it needs to be the best email or it needs to be extremely clear and compelling, then we're going to up the ante and make it harder for us to move through our work. Same thing applies with a brief that you're working on. What's a good enough brief? Okay, it's got these sections, maybe these 5 sections: an intro, statement of facts, a legal standard, analysis, conclusion. And for the argument section, the analysis covers these 3 points. And I need to cite the rule, apply the law to the relevant facts, and explain how that means this should be the outcome in this case. If you identify those little check boxes and start creating rubrics for your life, you're able to tell yourself, have I reached that standard? If I have, spending more time on this does not have a positive ROI. If I'm not there yet, then yeah, I need to work a little bit harder in order to be able to check those boxes. And I know that can feel a little cumbersome or pedantic to go into that level of detail defining what good enough is,
Mhm.
but it really is the thing that allows people to distinguish, am I investing time in this in a way that really doesn't help me here, or am I still working to get it to the point where I can say I have done a good enough job?
Mhm. So what tends to happen when someone waits until they feel completely certain before taking that action?
You have no idea how much you slow yourself down and how extreme the effect of that or the impact of that is. So, if anyone remembers the movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, she
Yeah.
lives 2 totally different experiences, right? 2 totally different lives. When one, she makes it on a subway train, and the other one, she misses it, and then it diverges into 2 different storylines. We don't have the ability to split test or A/B test our lives, but I promise you there's the sliding doors world where you get so much more done and you accomplish so much more because you're not constantly holding yourself back, overthinking. And then there's the world where you kind of go through life trudging through quicksand because you're spending so much unnecessary time making decisions. One of the things I tell my clients is my goal for you is I want you to spend the least amount of time deciding what to do and the most amount of time doing it. And there are so many examples that I see just every single week was when I talk to people. What are the things that they're overthinking? I recently coached a client who was overthinking whether or not to attend her law firm's annual attorney retreat. And we've talked about it
Wow.
like 5 different times over the course of our sessions. And finally, I was like, "Do you know how many times we've talked about this? Do you know how much time we've spent talking about this?" And I went through, do you need more information? Is there anything that's going to change? What do you actually want to do? What are you afraid of? And we went through all of these things. And she's like, I don't need more information, but maybe I'll feel better closer to the date. And I'm like, all right, but what does it cost you to leave this unanswered? What does it cost you to leave this unresolved? It's like a browser tab, on your internet browser that you just keep leaving open and that depletes your computer's memory. The same thing happens to us. I've coached people on, I want to take a vacation and I don't know when I should. And that keeps coming up. Well, not this date. And well, my daughter doesn't want to do it then. So I need to think about that more. I'm like, or you could just decide. And if she wants to come, she comes. And if she can't make it, she can't. And that's totally fine. But,
Yep.
not only are you spending a lot of hours and mental energy on these decisions, in situations like travel, it actually costs you more money to book it later. So there are
Mhm.
there are a lot of ways that the overthinking compounds and not in a good way. And then there are so many ways in which moving forward more quickly compounds in a really incredible and positive way. And if this helps anyone, the other thing that I really like to think about here is you gain more data once you decide and move forward. So you're thinking that you need more data on the front end before you decide, but that's actually the fallacy. You get more data once you decide and start to implement, and then you can start to tweak and make changes and make data driven decisions that get you closer and closer to your ideal result. When you don't get more data and you're waiting for it, you're really frozen and then you can't improve upon anything because you're not actually doing anything. So if you give yourself permission to not have to get it right at the start, and you allow yourself to tweak and act, audit, and adapt, as I like to say, then you're able to make a lot more progress in a much shorter period of time.
How can someone move forward though with a decision, even though, when they still feel unsure or maybe uncomfortable about things?
So part of it is just getting used to feeling uncomfortable. Ask yourself, how do you expect yourself to feel in this moment? And is it actually a problem? So check in. It's normally like going to be a gut feeling somewhere in your stomach, and that's going to feel a little icky. But that's all that's happening. You can move forward and take action. That's what we call allowing a negative emotion, is recognizing that you feel a certain way and not letting that be the roadblock that prevents you from moving forward. So that's a big part of it. And then trusting yourself that you will figure it out. Like the world will not end. You'll gain more information and then you can decide what to do next. Life is just a series of decisions. But if you give yourself permission to not have to get it right all the time and really abandon the idea that there is such a thing as right, all of this gets a lot easier.
So when someone catches themselves overthinking in real time, what can they do differently in that moment to break that pattern?
So it's going through this analysis of, is this a good use of my time? So a lot of people will think that worrying is actually productive unless you're planning and about to implement the plan that you've created. Your worrying is not productive. So are you redeciding or thinking about something you've already decided to do? If so, that's a waste of time. Move forward. Are you going back and forth between the same two options without any new information? If so, recognize that and pick one and move forward. Are you spending time thinking about something that's going to happen in the future that hasn't happened yet? And there's nothing you can do until that thing happens. If so, you're worrying about something that actually isn't ripe for worry. Catch that and decide to move forward. Are you overthinking about something that happened in the past? If so, if there's nothing you can do to change it, that issue is moot. Recognize it and move forward. And if you're overthinking or vacillating, but there's no more information that you need at this time, recognize it and make a decision and move forward. So the big part is just really understanding, seeing that you're doing it, and then establishing with yourself that it's not a productive use of your time because it fits into one of those categories that I just mentioned. And then at that point, you've got to redirect yourself back to what you were doing before. And if you plan your days, you have something to measure yourself against. So you know you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And you can get back to what was on the schedule. When you don't plan, it's a little bit harder to keep yourself accountable in that way.
Amazing. Miss Olivia, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Evan.
All right, that's it for today's episode of the Less Stressed Lawyer Show. If you're finding yourself stuck in overthinking and ready to start taking action, you can learn more about Olivia Vizachero and her coaching at oliviavizachero.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to like, leave a review, and subscribe to the show so you do not miss the next episode. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.